Welcome back to the Solitary Practice Podcast. It's been fairly quiet this week, so I've been thinking about choices a lot. How choices affect, influence, they are the linchpin of your practice. If you make a choice, and it doesn't matter how big or how small it is, every choice directs you. And decision fatigue can be a real thing. Want to acknowledge that right off the bat. It is exhausting to make choices and deal with the repercussions of those choices, both magically and in regular life, constantly. I recognize that. I acknowledge it. Still think you need to do it. There's a fun saying that it was in one of the way back 80s, 90s. There was a book series, The Last of the Renshahi. I think that was the name. I can't remember exactly. But anyway, there was a quote in the book that basically said, if you quit when you're tired, you'll die when you're tired. And that kind of always stuck with me because choices and then feeling the results of those choices is exhausting. But if you quit when you're tired, you'll die when you're tired. So you have to kind of build up your strength, learn to keep going, learn to deal with the consequences of your choices, not just immediately thereafter, but years down the road. If more people were comfortable making all the choices themselves, I think that we'd be further along as magical practitioners. But what tends to happen, people want to know doing the right thing. They want a sense of community. They want a guide. And so easier to fall into the herd mentality. And I'm using that kind of loosely, but not too loosely. If you think of a herd, they're all usually pretty similar. There's some individual, characteristics, but if anybody stands out too much, they're out. It's that particular group. And you can be individual as long as you stay within the confines of what is acceptable in that group. And various magical practices are not much different. I think that people are often not confident in themselves and they're not confident in their decisions. So it is, particularly when you're trying something new, people are afraid to make mistakes. And it is easier to have a guide. And so people want books, they want groups, they want community. And that works to a certain extent. It's sort of like shopping at the department store versus making your own clothes. When you go to the department store, there's a certain selection and you can pick your style and you'll look similar to everybody else, but maybe just kind of put a little bit of your own individual spin on it, but it's bulk made and everything's pretty decent. None of it is customized just to you. It's more general. And so nothing is a perfect fit. Whereas if you make your own clothes, you are in control of literally everything. From the type of thread you use, to the type of pattern, to the style, to the cloth, how your hemline sits, you pick every inch of it, and then you take responsibility for making it. And when it's done, the result of those choices is what you're wearing. So it is perfectly customized exactly to you. And you're not going to match everybody else. You're going to be different. You're going to, if you're out and about where people can see you, you are going to stand out. And I think that's one of the big differences between making your own path and following a pre-done one. Sometimes much more comforting for somebody just getting started out to have somebody else tell them what to do, because then they don't have to decide whether they're doing it right or not. There's a guide and you just have to follow it. What inevitably seems to happen is we find practitioners hopping from practice to practice to practice because they can't find the one that fits. And the answer there is they will never find the one that fits. Bulky practice is not a customized practice. It's meant to kind of sort of fit for a lot of people. It is not meant to work for you in particular. It's very important to watch your choices as you develop your practice. If you choose to go to a more mainstream, pre-made path, whatever you want to call it, you've just chosen to waste some of your time. And I don't know, maybe it's not a complete waste because you are going to learn something from it. Learning all the spells, rituals, depends on which path you're on, only to find out in the end that that doesn't work for you. And maybe you have to learn that you make bad choices before you can start to make good choices. I don't know. The important thing in any practice is the choices you make. You choose what types of magic you work. You choose when you work. You choose how you work. You choose who knows you work. All of those choices will give you a practice that is completely customized just to you. It is your practice. Choices can be an enormous factor in your practice. If you choose something short term, because it seems like it'll fix something in the moment. It could mess things up further down the road for you, and then you have a bigger cleanup and lift, and you're going to wish you never did that. But you have to be able to choose to look at everything from all angles, at a distance, up close. You really got to turn it over and, well, basically turn it over and shake it, see what comes out before you make your decision. But you have to choose to do that as well. And a lot of people don't, which causes problems down the road, and then they get frustrated and this isn't working. And again, it's because you made poor choices. If anybody's looking for kindness from me about choices that are made, you will find that I have no kindness there for that. You have to own your choices. I don't know what else to say. You have to own it. You made your choices. You've got to deal with the repercussions of those choices and learn to do better. Or learn that you did the right thing. That happens too. I'm trying to think of an example. All right, so this week I kind of got a little bit of an instruction that I am going to need a collapsible rain barrel, like 40, 50 gallons. Now, it is 10:30 at night, middle of the week. I have just chunked the wood stove. There, is the normal household prep for night thing going on. It's well below zero. The animals don't even want to come out of the barn. Like it's absolutely freezing out there. What on earth could I possibly need a collapsible rain barrel for? So I have a choice. I can acknowledge the information that's been provided to me that I'm going to need this rain barrel. And then I can either decide I know better or that I just don't want to and ignore that information. Or I can choose to, I guess, honor that information as being authentic and do what it tells me and go hunt down a rain barrel in the middle of January. Now, I've got some experience in this, and I know to base my choices more strategically than I would. Do I want to go and find these rain barrels that I've never even heard of at this time of night? No, I do not. Way easier to just finish shutting up the house and get ready to go to bed. In fact, it probably would have been much nicer. Instead, I stopped everything, went and researched rain barrels, much to the consternation of the rest of the household, purchased said rain barrel, and it is now currently en route to the house. People think I am slightly off my rocker for purchasing a collapsible rain barrel in January. Yes, they do. But much like the fire extinguisher, I know that, yes, I will get odd looks now. Yes, people will question my sanity. Yeah, I didn't really enjoy staying up later in the night to find and do this rain barrel. I'll make those sacrifices now, so in a little while, when the power goes out for a week, I have a 40-gallon collapsible rain barrel that I can use in the house for water storage around the household. So that's probably a very simple example, but I made a decision to do something that, probably isn't going to be received as the most sane thing anybody's ever done now, and brushed it off, done the work I needed to do to get everybody to kind of just not really worry about it, knowing that when the time comes, I will be able to deploy said rain barrel, and it's going to make my life easier. Now, did I have to do that? No. I could have chosen to ignore it. Even though I know I should order it, I could have ignored it. The consequences of that would just simply be that when the power goes out and we have a week of no power here, I will be manually dragging a sleigh out to the barn with buckets on it and then hand bucketing water into all these little buckets and 5-gallon pails and then dragging them all the way back to the house and then filling up all the containers I can find around here. I mean, we have some big ones, but it's manual. You got to fill it so that you have water for bathrooms and all the other stuff that you have to have. If I ignore ordering said rain barrel, I can do all of those things, but it is going to be a pain. I'm probably going to have to take off of work. It's going to be a more difficult lift. I chose not to make my life more difficult. Yeah, I lost a couple hours of sleep, and some people thought that, my odd was showing again, but later on, they'll be glad I did. So you got to make your choices that are going to have the best effect overall, not necessarily long term, but overall, short and long term together. You really have to kind of weigh it and balance it. You also have to direct your practice with your choice. So you're going to have to make choices, then that's going to kind of steer where you go and how you advance. And it's not going to be clear cut all the time. Sometimes you're going to make choices to go and do things, and it's going to seem like you wasted some time there, but the time it was also very clear that this was the right way to go. And you may think it's a dead end, and then you'll move on, and later on you'll learn that you didn't learn that for nothing. You may need it later, or it may be part of the building of the foundation of your practice. But you have to make some choices, and you'll make some wrong choices once in a while. We've all done it. We'll all do it again. In order to really hone in on making good choices for your practice, you have to start making choices. You got to make the mistakes, you got to have the successes, you've got to learn to weigh them both. There's a lot of analyzation going on. You need to analyze what you've done, what you've learned, where you're going, and then make choices based on that analysis. It's just the best way to build a customized practice. I have kind of contemplated recently whether or not I should have trained a successor. I've never trained a successor. I had opportunity. I mean, obviously, I had two kids, and in theory, if I really wanted to, I could have started teaching either one of them when they were quite young. I could have introduced them to various entities. There's a lot of things I could have done that would have essentially assured that at least one of them was ready to succeed me. As it is, it looks like, just like I'm the last in my line, I'm the last one that's going to get tied to this place. My magical contract does not require me to train a successor. I assume the land has a plan for that because they didn't put it in the contract, and quite frankly, it's kind of smart, so I'm thinking it knows something or has a plan. Maybe it has a different plan. Maybe it has a different successor in mind. It can do whatever it wants. I won't be here to worry about it. But I do sometimes wonder if I should have trained somebody. And then I kind of get into and how would we choose the person? How would we find the person? How would we locate the person? How would we even teach the person? And I don't really know the answer to any of those things. But again, I would probably have to start making choices. I have to go from there. And it'd probably be a learning experience for all involved. Get off kind of on a tangent here. I'm a magical practitioner. I've had kids. I'm not going to wax eloquent on this for too long, but I want to put it out there. I see a lot of magical practicing parents raising their kids. They're their kids. It's their family. They can raise them any way they want. But from my perspective, if you are a magical practitioner, you take your children and you essentially teach them your practice, immerse them in it, put them on your path. You are not any different than any of the other mainstream religious practices out there. I've seen too many magical practitioners who state, they were first forced to go to church or whatever when they were young, and they are not doing that with their children. They're going to raise them as magical creatures or children or whatever. And what they do is the same thing to their kids was done with them, just with a different, I'm going to say, magical bent. So they're not going to church, but we're taking them to the solstice celebration, that kind of thing. If you're doing that, you're no different than the more mainstream religious counterparts. I'm not saying, I'm right or wrong, but from my perspective, people tend to think of children as like theirs. I tend to look at children as individual, small people who are growing and will eventually be adults. I tend to treat them as such. The result of that is that I have incredibly independent, capable, and self-sufficient children. If I drop dead tomorrow, I have absolutely no doubt that they will pick up everything and run with it, and it will probably not even have a hitch in the giddy up. Either one of them, perfectly capable. My poor husband probably would not know what even happened. They would just run his life as efficiently as they would run everything else around here. And that's great because they are self-sufficient. They do not require me to care for them. They are financially stable. They're out there doing their thing. But I did not ever indicate to them that I practice. Do I think they suspect? They're old enough now that I think sometimes do suspect. However, because what I do does not look anything like what mainstream society indicates as magical practice, they can't be sure. They know weird stuff happens. They know I know things a long time beforehand. They know I can tell them what's going to happen. They know I can tell them what they should do. They know I can accurately take care of all sorts of illnesses and that kind of thing and make things grow and live. It doesn't look like magic or what they think magic should look like. So they have no idea that I practice, and I've raised them completely ignorant of the fact that I do practice. I regret that not at all. They are their own people. I would be delighted if one of them did have a practice, but they may never have one, and that's perfectly fine. Because in order to be successful in magic, you have to want it. Doing it just because somebody else in your family did it, or you were taught to do it when you were young, you need a certain will, a certain drive, a certain desire to make it happen and be very successful to get to the level that where you top out in your skill set. If you're doing it just because somebody else has already told you to or has always been doing it, and that's just how your family does things, does not indicate any kind of ability. And quite frankly, when the going gets tough, you're less likely to keep going because, again, you stop when you're tired, you'll die when you're tired. You have to really willing to drive forward. And just like in sports or any other competition, and I know some people are going to kind of think that's odd, but in a competition, you've got to have that drive to win and you've got to have that drive to succeed. And in magic, you need that drive just as much. You need the drive to come out on top. You need the drive to master difficult skills. You need the commitment level to spend the time and effort it takes to actually master what you're trying to master. And that is a personal choice. No one can make that choice for you. If you're going to do it and you're going to love it and you're going to commit your life to it as a lifelong practitioner would, that needs to be your choice. Somebody can't choose it for you. You have to want it. And so I have not ever given my children any indication that I practice. If they decide to practice one day, I only want them to do it because they want to do it, not because I did it, not because it gave me an edge on certain things or they have some strange perception of it. Because again, when you're outside looking in at a practice, you're not really seeing how a practice, again, it comes back to choice. I want them to choose to do it. If they choose to do it, they're more likely to put forth the effort and master it than if I've spent the last 20 something years telling them this is the way things are done. They're also more likely to go out and seek. They're likely to form their own thoughts. I would want them to be, and if they ever do choose to, I don't have any doubts that they will be extremely analytical thinkers. I want them to question it. I want them to turn it over. I want them to take it apart and put it back together and figure out how it works. Me spoon feeding them from birth would not have given them the information in a way that would make them, wouldn't be as valuable to them. When you learn something yourself, when you master it yourself, there's a certain sense of pride in your work and ownership in your work. If somebody else is spoon feeding this to you or are encouraging you and you need a cheering squad to get through it, it's not the same when you get kind of like down in the nitty-gritty dirt and you really grind for it. I hope that if anytime either of them ever decide to take up a practice, that that's the way it's going to go for them. But again, it is their choice. It is not to choose for them. I think a lot of parents think that they know what's best for their children when they don't actually even know their children, because their perception of their children is not actually what their child is. So, all right, I'm going to get off my soapbox there and then pop back over onto choice. So choice is pretty important. Your choices will define your practice. They're going to determine where you go. They're going to determine who you go with and how you perceive things. But choice is really going to give you that customized, ultra personal practice that I think most people are looking for but never quite achieve. They find stuff that kind of works in the moment but never quite feels right, and as a result they bounce from thing to thing to thing. Whereas if put the work in, and it is work, like I'm going to acknowledge that it's kind of miserable, particularly when you're trying to get started, you get frustrated and it's difficult and you can't go really ask anyone per se because they're not doing the same things you are. Then there's that, well, sense of being on your own. I want to say loneliness. I think we all have a little bit of, we get lonely in our practices once in a while, so I don't know if that's really the right term, but you are very much on your own and you're out there just trying to figure it out and there's nobody you can go to for answers. I think that's as it should be. But, you can't go get a second opinion, essentially. Or at least most people don't think they can. There are places you can go and get a second opinion, but again, you need to know how to unlock them. And I think that's another area where sometimes choices are made that are not the wisest choice. People do not choose to take the time at the basics. Everybody wants to get going. I need money this week. If you needed money this week, you should have started about 5 years ago and learn how to trigger money in a way that would benefit you now. Unfortunately, people tend to wait until things are dire and then want it to fix. A good, solid, magical fix does not happen quickly. Quick fix will have long-term problems later on. Things will crop up. It will not actually solve your issue. A quick fix does not solve the, like I want to say it like a third time, emphasize it enough. You have to make choices to set yourself up so that you're positioned in a solid area all the time. You need, again, belts, suspenders, strong foundation, good walls. You essentially, with your choices, will set yourself up to succeed or fail. Now, I've made my choices can't be doing too bad because I'm in a pretty good spot right now. It won't last. There'll be good times, there'll be bad times, but I have backup plans. I have things in place. Every choice and every decision I make, and that comes from like whether I grab a glass of water first thing in the morning to long-term financial planning. Every choice I make is to position myself securely going forward. What that often means is that I am not doing anything I want to do. I think maybe I was probably my early 20s the last time I did something that I wanted to do. Not about what I want to do. I have an end goal. I have a fixed point in which all things are built off of, and that is the preservation and protection of this particular piece of land. My entire life and all my decisions and everything I do will always be centered around that. And what I like, what I want, what I'm interested in will always come last in relation to that. That was my decision, and that's how I make decisions, which is sometimes a little hard for people to understand because I will do things that seem odd. I could save more money if I did not have this place. I could actually really significantly increase wealth if I did not have this place. I could go and do pretty much anything I wanted, quite frankly, if I didn't have this place, but I chose to be here. And while, yes, right now, Monday morning, I could go and say, all right, getting rid of all of this. Yeah, I'd be, quite frankly, we'd be set for a couple generations. But that would be the choice that was not correct. It would not preserve this place. It would not fill the terms of my contract. And honestly, even at this point, I don't even care about the contract anymore. It's been so many years. I'm so accustomed to thinking first about this place in all things that I couldn't not at this point. It would take a lot of retraining. Ooh, that's a good thing. One of the choices you have to make is a choice to train yourself. You have got to be in control of you. And that basically you have to master on your own. I can't tell you how to do that, but I did spend a lot of time basically getting a hold of myself. I don't know how you want to say it, but master the physical body. Like that has to be obedient to your whims. You have to, it can't rule you. You have to rule it. I don't know how else, but that's a choice. It takes a fine hand and a little bit of doing. So not an easy choice to make, but as you're making choices with regards to your physical body, you need to make smart choices there as well. Maybe someday I'll get into that, but not today. Anyway, choices are pivotal. I'm trying to think of other examples. I had a full ride scholarship to a college offered to me, and I turned it down and chose instead to stay here because I would be completely on the other side of the country from here. I would not be home very often. And so my choice was to turn that down, and I stayed here. Would that have taken my life on a wildly different path? Yes, it would. Yes, it would. I would probably be practicing openly. I would indubitably not be living here. No aspect of my current life would bleed over into that one. So when I made that choice, I had to look at it, I weighed it, and then I weighed my fixed point, my foundation of my practice, against that and chose my practice. I would have had a wildly different practice, and I think it would have looked much more like traditional practice nowadays that you would see out in the wild of society, like a normal witchy practice. I can tell you that because I can see it. If I run it back and then take out that parallel line, you can go have a look at it. But my decision was to stay. But again, that was an immediate boon that had a long-term effect. And so I took I guess we're gonna call it a loss in the short term to gain in the long term. Let's be honest. I was 17 at the time. I was pretty darn young, but I was capable enough at that point to run the lines and kind of look at it, weigh it, and understand the value of choice and how it was going to affect not just then, but years and years and decades down the road. And that's kind of where you get to a strong practice is when you are really, really concise about your choices and you think about your choices and you're making good, solid choices, set you up for success in your magical practice. And if you can get to where you're making those kind of choices, you're also making good, like mundane, everyday life choices because again, you're trying to position yourself for success. If you keep making stupid spending decisions, I don't know, maybe we're buying takeout every single week or something like that. I don't know. If people do, like no judgment about that, it's wasteful to me. And then at the same time wondering why you're not saving enough money, it's because you've made dumb choices. Like no kindness. Sorry, no kindness. You have to know what your goals are and you've got to make your choices based on what's your focus, what's your goal. My goal is to stay here, to live here, to die here. I do not want to be separated from this place or the land, and so every choice I'm making revolves around staying committed to this place for my time here before I move on. So I think I've gone over a little bit there, and before I get off in a tirade about people's choices, I think I'll stop. As always, I appreciate everyone who listens to me ramble on. I just talk away here for a half hour or so and hope it comes out. So I thank you for that. If anybody has any questions or something you want to hear more about, you can always contact me through my website at thesolitarypractice.com. Again, I appreciate your time. So everybody have a great week, and I will talk to you next time.